and welcome to the Banker's Tech Talk video series, keeping up with developments in the fintech space. I'm Joy Macknight, Managing Editor at The Banker, and I'm joined by Rhydian Lewis, CEO of Ratesetter, a UK peer-to-peer lending platform. Rhydian, thanks so much for joining me today. The last time we did an interview actually was about 3 years ago. It was at the Innovate Finance Global Summit. What has happened in the past 3.5 years? How has the business developed?
Thank you very much for inviting me back. Well, a lot's happened. I mean, 3 years is a long time in a new industry. We have grown 2-3 times since 2016. We're now close to $1 billion under management. Over 500,000 people have invested or borrowed through Ratesetter. So when we spoke in 2016, it was still a kind of concept, but now it's kind of getting some reality to it, and people can recognise that. So a lot's happened. We're now 9 years old. So, and I think one important thing to point out, it's a simple point, is that it's 3 more years of track record. And so with each year that goes by, people begin to take it a little bit more seriously. There's been some quite major developments in the industry as well, not just at Ratesetter. The one I would point to is the introduction of our ISA. So I think the government were quite bold quite early on with peer-to-peer lending to introduce it to the ISA framework. And that is now in its 3rd year. It's called the Innovative Finance ISA, and is really beginning to take shape. And Ratesetter, I'm proud to say, is the largest provider of this Innovative Finance ISA. And I really believe that it's going to become the kind of hero product of peer-to-peer lending on the investing side for years to come.
The peer-to-peer lending space is maybe a bit crowded. How does Ratesetter differentiate itself from its competitors?
I'd say the main thing is that Ratesetter's always seen itself as an investment brand, whereas I think a lot of the peer-to-peer lending platforms define themselves as borrower brands. And that following from that is that we have been very focused on firstly making it a retail product. So Ratesetter is exclusively retail on the investment side, whereas a lot of the platforms have moved on to taking other forms of money, whereas Ratesetter has always been very single-minded in making it a retail product. And that's meant that we've been very focused on keeping it very simple. And we believe that we have the lowest risk and most liquid peer-to-peer investment product. And that is our focus. I think others have looked at a more perhaps high-risk, high-return model, whereas Ratesetter's focus is on making it simple and safe. And we've done this, just moving onto the sort of technical level, we've done this with the introduction of what's called the provision fund, which we introduced right at the start in 2010, and is now sort of bedding in as a recognised model in peer-to-peer lending, which has the very positive effect in our eyes of making it lower risk, more predictable, simpler, and crucially more liquid, because the effect of the provision fund into which all borrowers pay and from which all investors are protected is that there's a collective investment effect. So when you put your money into Ratesetter, you're putting your money and it's instantly spread across the whole portfolio thanks to the provision fund. And this keeps it low risk, predictable returns, and also liquid. So liquidity is obviously an incredibly important point in finance. We believe that the provision fund and the way we've approached our model has made it the most liquid as well. So the key differentiation is the way that we have set up our investment product.
Okay, and I also know that you've now recently introduced stress testing on the provision fund. Can you explain why you've done that?
The provision fund was set up that is how much we have in the provision fund as a percentage of the expected losses from the loan portfolio. And that produces a ratio, what we call the coverage ratio. And so long as the coverage ratio is above 1, investors are safe. And we've run the business up to now with a coverage ratio in excess of 1 to allow for unforeseen, unexpected losses. So in other words, the fact that we've always run the provision fund to an excess has allowed for the stresses. And we believe that actually perhaps a neater way of doing it is to introduce stress testing at the expected loss level. So when we actually look at the amount we need to provide for, that will include a stress test. And then we will always make sure that the provision fund has that in it. So it's actually just an amendment of the way that we're doing it. It's not that previously we haven't been looking at stresses. It's just been, in the past, it's been expressed in having an excess to our ratio, whereas in time, it'll just be that the expected losses figure, which is a key figure for us, which just to make it crystal clear what we're talking about here, there's a loan portfolio, nearly £1 billion. At any one time, Ratesetter is calculating what it believes are going to be the losses from that portfolio, and it makes sure that its provision fund always has the resources to cover those losses. And if it does have that coverage, just to repeat, investors are safe. So this is just an evolution of our model, and stress testing is important to us. And we believe that there's a lingering concern that peer-to-peer lending has thrived in a period of benign credit. I would argue that is correct, but actually it's also thrived in a period of low interest rates where margins have been very low. So while the credit has been benign, the actual competitive environment has been very tough. And I think that we may be seeing in the UK the first signs of perhaps a slowdown, and it'll be an acid test. And I think that when the major peer-to-peer platforms come through this period, and we're confident with our provision fund that we will, I think people's perception of peer-to-peer lending will change quite dramatically, actually.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your insights, Rhydian.
Not at all. Thank you very much.